Welcome everyone to our webinar today, your guide to MFA, Multi-Factor Authentication, enhancing your MyArc security. Well, my name is Jason Mejias. I'm one of the product marketing managers here at ARC. I'm also going to be one of your presenters today. Along with, I have Stephen Gardner, who's also on the line, who's one of our information security architects, as well as Ariana Levinson, who is our program manager for security, risk, and compliance. Ariana, thank you for joining us today.
No problem.
Well, this is a hot topic. We've been talking about MFA probably in our own lives throughout the past few years when we talk about security. Today, we're going to be really honing in on what is MFA, what are those benefits, and how is it going to affect all our MyArc users. So Ariana, why don't you give us an overview of what is MFA and what are those benefits for us?
Sure. So MFA, multi-factor authentication, adds an extra layer of security to your accounts by requiring multiple forms of identity verification before granting access. The key word here is multiple forms of identity verification. Those forms are also known as authentication factors. Authentication factors generally fall into three main buckets. The first is knowledge, or something you know. That's going to be a username and password, a passcode, a PIN number. It's something in your head that you keep secret, and it's just something that you know. The second is possession, or something you have. So a one-time passcode or OTP that's generated in an app on your phone, a physical token with a code that the number changes every so often, or even a badge that can be something that you have. And the third we aren't using in ARC's implementation of MFA, but that is out there, is something you are. That's usually biometrics like a fingerprint or an iris scan. So that's where multi-factor authentication comes in for. It's something you access, which in this case is MyArc, and you need to use more than one authentication factor in order to do so. So for ARC, it's going to be something you know, your MyArc username and password, and something you have, a one-time passcode that will either be generated in Google Authenticator, or you can have it sent to the email associated with your MyArc account.
Ariana, this is really good to just set the tone of what we're going to be covering. Before we move on, just a couple housekeeping items. One, keep in mind that this webinar is being recorded. All our lines are going to be kept muted to just create the consistency for our call today. If you do have a question, I'm going to encourage you to leverage the questions area of GoToWebinar. We're going to be monitoring that. I have myself, Ariana, and a few others, including Stephen, that are monitoring the questions area, and we'll be getting to as many of those questions as we can throughout the webinar. So Ariana, we've talked about what is multi-factor authentication. Can you give us a little bit more into what are those benefits for using it?
Sure. So overall, this all falls under the bucket of enhancing security and keeping bad guys out of your account. The first way is by requiring multiple forms of verification. MFA creates a multi-layered sort of defense in-depth approach that makes it harder for unauthorized users to get through. You see this a lot. It's very apparent when it comes to like phishing attacks. Many phishing attacks are trying to get your username and password, which is something you know. So if the way that you get into your account is two passwords, that's two something you knows. So that's going to be compromised in the same way. There's a higher chance then that both will be compromised. So that's sort of the point of an extra separate authentication factor or verification method, that if one is compromised, then you still have that other one. And if both are required, then the bad guys still can't get in because there's that second method that hasn't been compromised. All of this helps to reduce the risk of unauthorized access. Microsoft has done a study showing that MFA can block 99.9% of automated attacks on accounts. An automated attack can be something like a password spray where a bad guy is just guessing at your account password. But statistically, if they guess enough times and your password is simple enough, at some point, they could potentially guess on the right one. And at that point, either without MFA, they'll just get through. Or again, if there's that second verification method that has to be compromised in a completely separate way, that will stop them from getting in. And that's why it's such a powerful tool to prevent account takeovers, fraud, etc.
And I would think for the most part, most of our customers, most of our users on today's webinar, whether they realize it or not, have been using MFA in some form in their life, whether that's accessing the bank online or different platforms. So we're kind of in our culture, we're used to engaging with this type of functionality. We're just now bringing this to ARC, specifically MyARC. So if you're on this call today, hopefully you are already using MyARC. MyARC is it's kind of our central access point, really, where you're accessing a growing list of our tools. So whether you're accessing MyARC for accreditation, maybe for ARC Pay, some of our dashboards, including our document retrieval service, DRS. In fact, maybe you're on this call and you are been receiving our communications where DRS is moving exclusively to MyARC beginning February 6th. So today, historically, you've been able to link your MyARC account with DRS. Well, as part of our security methods for PCI as well as multi-factor authentication, we're going to be requiring that. So moving forward, effective February 6th, you're going to be accessing DRS exclusively through MyARC. So again, you're on this session today, it's really those who are accessing MyARC where we're going to be engaging with multi-factor authentication. So Ariana, you want to walk us through what is it going to look like March 13th? So yes, that's when you're first hearing it. March 13th is when we're going to be going live with MFA. So that day, when you go to access MyARC, there's going to be some changes. You're going to have to enroll in multi-factor authentication. So Ariana, you want to walk us through what that's going to look like?
Yeah. So on the day, when you first go to log into MyARC, you will have two options here. We're going to allow, just at first, MFA via Google Authenticator. So a one-time passcode will be generated on the app on your phone if you choose to enroll in it, and or email authentication. A one-time passcode will be sent to your email. So here's what you need to know. If you would like to use Google Authenticator in addition to email authentication, email is sort of a default option because the email is already associated with your MyARC account. So if you would like to also have the option to use Google and pick back and forth which one you want to use every time you log in, you need to set up Google first. If you set up email first, the next time you log in, Google will not be offered as an option anymore, and you would need to call into the customer care center and have them reset your authentication factors. So if you would like Google as an option, you need to opt into it and set that one up first.
All right, Ariana, so at this point, we have our two different versions of multi-factor. So let's actually go into a live demo where we're actually going to show you what that setup of multi-factor authentication looks like. In the meantime, there are questions that are coming in. I do want to remind everyone, if you do have a question, you could leverage the questions area of GoToWebinar, and it will allow you to type your questions in, and we're going to be getting to those questions, whether we might be typing a response or we'll address them here on the webinar itself. All right, we can see your screen, Ariana.
Awesome. So this is, just to note for everyone, this is a lower development environment. So it may look slightly different than it does live every day, but this is MyARC and this is what the login will look like. So your first step is to sign in. And then as you saw in the deck, you'll be presented with these two options. If you click into Google Authenticator and set up, you need to select iPhone or Android and download the app onto the device that you'll be using from whichever app store is applicable to you. Once you have your selection, a QR code will be presented. In your phone, when you click into Google Authenticator, you'll be given the option to scan a QR code, and this is a QR code. If you can't scan the QR code, there will be this code generated, and there will be a place in your phone in the app to put this code into. And this is how you will enroll. With email, remember again, if you enroll in email first, you will not be offered Google again as an option. But if you choose so, it will send you that you click send me the code, and it will email you a one-time passcode that you will then put in. So we're going to enroll in Google, and I'm going to select the QR code and scan it with my phone, which you can't really see right now, but And this screen for entering the code will come up, and there will be a code generated in the app on your phone that you will then enter. As I was explaining how this works, my session timed out. So 1 second. Let me repeat those steps. Scan a QR code, click next, enter your code, click verify. And now I've been logged into MyArc and I am enrolled in Google Authenticator. In a minute, I will receive an email saying I have enrolled in an authentication factor, and it'll tell me which authentication factor, in this case, Google.
Ariana, a couple questions that are coming in. One is if they're using Google Authenticator for another app, or let's say maybe even for Sabre for one of their GDSs, do they still need to enroll for Google Authenticator for ARC?
Yes, so within the app, you can enroll in multiple, each one is a unique, each login, each code generated is unique to the organization that you're connected to. So if you use, if for example, you have Google Authenticator and you use it with Sabre, within the app, there will sort of be a Sabre account and a code generated for that specific login. And if you enroll then for MyArc, there will be a separate enrollment there and a separate line item in the app that will have a second code, and that one will only be used for MyArc access. And they'll be labeled, one would say Sabre and one would say MyArc.
Another questions that come in, a lot of great questions. We're going to do our best to get through all of them. Is I already use the Okta app for work. Can I get a push notification to the Okta app for MFA?
We aren't offering that at this time. We can consider that as a future enhancement, but for March 13th, the options that will be available are Google Authenticator and email.
Great. Going through these questions as best as I can. Can I use a Microsoft Authenticator? Again, we're going to be going out the gates supporting Google Authenticator as well as email. Another question as far as can we enroll before the March 13th? I believe as of right now, that's going to be everyone at the same time as far as activating. So as of right now, our go live date for all customers for MyArc will be March 13th.
That's correct.
Once again, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you do have a question, you can type them into the questions area of GoToWebinar. Going through as many of these as I can, a lot of great questions. There's some questions here around DRS and what that's going to look like to the migration to MyArc. I'm going to be taking those questions offline for the sake of this webinar so we can focus on MFA from MyArc, but I will be taking those DRS questions and going back and working with Phil Meyer, our product owner, and we will be responding to those questions specifically to DRS. Now, Ariana, I know we've walked through some of those screens as far as in real time for Google Authenticator. I'm going to go back and I'm going to share my screen. Do we want to go through kind of recapping that as well as talk a little bit about what that's going to look like for enrolling with email?
Sure. Okay, then I can see your screen again. So again, you're going to have these two options that you pick between. And if you enroll in Google first, then you will have the option for both. You scan the QR code in the Google Authenticator app on your phone or on your tablet, whatever device you're going to use, and that will automatically enroll you. And if you have trouble scanning the QR code, then you can click the can't scan under that code, and it will give you an actual code generated of letters and numbers. That's really the code behind a QR code, and you will input that in to enroll, and that's enrollment with Google Authenticator. And here you can see, the code where it goes in. The setup key will be generated on your MyArc screen, and then you will put that into your phone if you can't scan the QR code. And this is the screen from your phone.
I think it's good to highlight here the screenshots that you see on the right-hand side. This is what it will look like in the Google Authenticator app. So these are
Yes.
just some screenshots where you're able to see, sorry about that, the actual screenshots of what it looks like in the application of the Google Authenticator when you're setting that up.
Yep.
So once they're set up and they've done their work on the app, can you talk a little bit about the email they're going to receive that confirms their authentication?
Yes. So we are using Okta as our MFA service provider. So you will receive an email from noreply@okta.com. It will say, you just confirming I've enrolled in this authenticator at this time. And that will be your comfort. And every time, if you ever call into the customer care center and you have your authenticators reset, then you will get an email saying your authenticators have been reset. And when you re-enroll, you'll again receive a notification that you've been enrolled. So when your authenticators change, enrollment, removal, anything, you will get an automated email notifying you.
So we have some questions that are coming in. One of those is, how do we get Google Authenticator? I can take that one on. So Google Authenticator is available within the Google Play Store as well as the iOS Apple App Store. Both of those apps are free, so you can access those today within just your standard device app store to be able to download. Again, one of the great things about communicating this early is that you can start preparing yourself by having those apps ready and downloaded to your devices so that when we do go live on March 13th, you're prepared for that. Couple questions again coming in. One, as far as this webinar, will this recording be emailed? So yes, if you've registered for this webinar, you're attending today, we're going to be sending out a follow-up email that'll have the recording of this session. So you will have that along with the deck and the presentation slides. And we'll talk about it later toward the end about our resources that we have for MFA, including what we're posting on our commercial site, as well as what's coming in the next few weeks. So we talked about configuring the Google Authenticator. Can you talk a little bit about configuring their email authentication as well?
Yes. So if you configure Google Authenticator first, then you're sort of automatically going to be enrolled in email authentication. It'll come along for the ride. If you don't want to use Google Authenticator, you still have to MFA to log into MyArc. This is a requirement. So at least one of these has to be in place, and email is going to be the default. So if you don't want Google, then you will click Setup under Email Authentication, and it will then pop up a screen that will have, next slide. You'll click Send Me the Code, and it will send you a code to your email that will confirm you've been enrolled in the authentication factor, and it will also have the code that you then put in and you then log into MyArc. Yeah.
So again, once again, can you hear me, Ariana? I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of delay.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, so as far as the authentication, once they've set up email, similar to Google Authenticator, they're also going to receive an email confirming their enrollment. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Couple questions that are coming in. What would be the process if the users are already registered for Google MFA?
So you can register for, you can have multiple partitions in the Google Authenticator app. You can use it for more than one account. So there will be a line and a code for each account that you use. So if you use it for Sabre or for anything else, then this will just be another code in the app, and this one will be the MyArc code. Use the MyArc code with the MyArc login, you use your Sabre code with your Sabre login, etc.
Okay, great. Once again, if you have questions coming in, you can add those into the questions area of the GoToWebinar. Some questions that are coming in, several of the same. Again, I'm doing my best to read through them. Is this individually, or I guess there's some folks that are using one login for MyArc that's shared. So do you want to talk a little bit about how this is individual?
Yeah, so the goal of this is that each individual identity is verified, that you've proven that you are you. We are required to implement MFA as a part of PCI DSS requirements. If you have concerns related to shared accounts, please reach out to us and we will do our best to address them. But this implementation of MFA is an individual MFA that you prove your individual identity as you log in.
So the question comes in, can we opt out of MFA or is this mandatory?
This is mandatory because of PCI DSS. This is something that we are required to enact as a part of changing compliance requirements.
Okay, there's a couple more questions we're going to handle offline. I'm going to be typing in some responses, but we've talked about configuring our authenticators, which is, again, that's something the first time you log in to MyArc after March 13th. Well, can you talk to us a little bit about what is it going to look like once they've configured their authenticators? What's it going to look like on March 14th, the second day, or the moment after they've registered? What is the day in the life of the user going to look like when they log into MyArc?
Absolutely. Please just let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, so we're starting back in on your MyArc sign-in page, and you'll click sign in. And since I enrolled in Google Authenticator first, I have this little arrow next to the logo. I can click the drop down and toggle back and forth between which one I want. If I click send me the code, then it will I will receive an email with a one-time passcode, put that passcode in, and that's how I will log in. If I go with Google Authenticator, then on my phone, I put in my code and click verify. And that will log me in. And that's the process. Every time you log in, that will be the process.
So there's a couple questions that are coming in regards to the authenticators and how some users don't use apps or their personal devices, and asking why we're using Google Authenticator. Google Authenticator, again, is one of those options for efficiency, being able to have outside with the device. But if you don't have access to a device during those sessions, that's why we're also making email defaulted as available to you. All right, let me take a look at some more questions here. Again, if you have questions, you can type those in into the questions area. When I set up a new user on March 13th, at what point in their activation of the profile will the MFA pop up?
The MFA should pop up upon their first login to the system, to MyArc. When they go to authenticate to MyArc, when they log in.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that moment that they go into their normal everyday logging into MyArc, they've typed their username and password. When they click on sign in at that moment, that's when it's going to really ask them for their MFA. First time it's going to be for the enrolling. After they've done their enrollment, at that point, whenever they typed in their username and password, it's going to ask them to authenticate. And they'll have their choices of whether they've set up Google Authenticator. If not, then also email. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. We got a question here. This is a good one. After we log in with email, is it possible to change the passcode?
So once if you mean your MyArc password, you can change your MyArc password through the mechanisms that you always have. Once you're logged in, there's nothing more that you need to do with the one-time passcode that's generated in the app or sent to your email. It's a one-time code. You put it in, you log in, and that code is never used again.
Great. We have a couple comments that say Google Authenticator is so easy. I appreciate that for those questions coming in and those comments. Again, what we did look at, what we were reviewing and doing an audit of the different applications, efficiency was a big key for us. And understanding, again, this is a little bit different outside of your normal behavior, whether you're accessing IAR and you're in MyArc daily, we wanted to make it as easy as possible. And knowing that, again, having the choice between Google Authenticator as well as email. We wanted to be able to offer those options. Oh, got more questions. Just review them as we go. How will MFA affect the MyArc administrators? Ariana, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So this is going in front of MyArc, where you log in. One second. If you log in here. So as well as accreditation, there will be MFA required if you are an accreditation user as well.
All right, a couple more questions. Can Google Authenticator be on more than one device?
You can download the app onto more than one device, but the thing is that the code won't transfer over from device to device. When you enroll in MFA in Google, it's just on that specific device. So you can't have it on your phone. You can't enroll once on your phone and then just transfer that enrollment onto your tablet and have it on both. If you're going to use, we recommend that you have your if you're going to use Google Authenticator, that you put it on the device that will be with you the most frequently. You will need to use MFA every time you log in. So if you want to put it on your tablet and you always have your tablet with you and available to use, then you can put it on your tablet. But I think we would recommend your phone if that's what's going to be with you more often.
To that point, an additional question is, what if I've signed up for both authentications, email as well as Google Authenticator? Can I just log in with just the email authentication in case I don't have access to my smartphone?
You absolutely can. If you register for Google first, you will be able to toggle back and forth between the two. I can show you again here on the screen, if you can still see my screen. If you registered for Google first, you will have this little arrow, this drop down, and you can just select email. So this is the easiest way. If you would like to have both options available to you at all times, then enroll in Google first, and then you can just pick which one you want.
Okay, a couple more review questions. Again, do we need to wait until March to set up MFA and MyArc? On March 13th, that's our scheduled date of release that we will go live. You can download the app, Google Authenticator, on your smartphone or on your device before that date. But as far as enrolling into MFA for MyArc, that will go live on March the 13th. Ariana, we got a great question. What happens if you change your device? If you've changed phones or you upgraded, what happens at that point?
Please call the customer care center and have them reset your authentication factor, and then you can re-enroll on your new device.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen and actually go into, Ariana, can you walk us through couple tips and tricks and things that you recommend from your part of the world and working in security, and as far as making it easier for implementation for our customers?
Yes. So the first is, please make sure that your email password and your MyArc password are different if you choose to use email MFA. If they are the same, then compromising one compromises the other. It's very important that to maintain security, you keep those passwords separate. That isn't something that ARC can enforce. That's you choosing a different password for your MyArc account than you have set for your email account tied to your MyArc account. To add, remove, or change your authenticator type, please contact the ARC Customer Care Center, and that includes to that other user's question if you've got a new device as well. Do not share your OTP, your one-time passcode, with anyone. It is the validation of you and you alone. If you receive an email for a one-time passcode and you did not request it, or you weren't trying to log in and you just received it out of the blue, stop what you're doing and call the customer care center. We, ARC, will never ask you to provide your password to us. We won't ask you to provide it over the phone, and we won't ask it via email. Finally, as mentioned previously, Okta is going to be our MFA service provider. So please, please add no reply at okta.com to your safe list so that you will receive the emails for your authentication code if you choose email, the enrollment confirmation emails. If you are trying to enroll and you aren't getting the emails, please make sure to check your spam just in case.
All right, let's tackle a couple questions that I know that we had already set up, but also some more that are coming in. So I'll give you the first one. Do I need to authenticate with MFA every time I access my ARC?
Yes. The requirement that we're meeting is that MFA needs to be in place for every authentication attempt into MyArc. That's every time you log in. If you log into MyArc with MFA and you're idle and your session times out, then when you go to log back in, you will need to do so again with multi-factor authentication.
All right, well, once MFA is implemented, will I still need to change my MyArc password every 90 days?
Yes, you will. That is not changing. That is going to be nothing related to that experience will be changing at all.
There's a question that has come in regards to, are we able to make our MyArc passwords longer than the character limit today?
Yes, you will be able to. That change has not gone live yet, but that is, I understand that I've seen some questions that is also a requirement changing for PCI. And over the next few months, you will see that we are going to allow, I believe it's 14 to 72 characters.
All right, Judy, I know you're on the call from our training team. There's a question actually for you. Will this also affect the training login that customers access today?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jason. Thank you for throwing that my way. At this time, because our ARC specialist training and our security training is on a third-party vendor platform, so that login is separate and aside from the MyArc and anything in the ARC MFA credentials. So at this time, nothing is changing on the training site for login.
Okay, that's helpful. Again, a couple of questions came in. Can you show that email address for the safe list? It's no reply at okta.com. Now, I know there's a lot of information that we've covered, and there's a lot more that are going to come over the next month that you're thinking through. How do we prepare ourselves and get ourselves ready for this implementation? Well, I'm going to let you know that we have resources available today. So if you were to visit arccorp.com, we have a page dedicated to multi-factor authentication coming to ARC. There you're going to find an FAQ document. We're continuing to add to this page. So in fact, today, after all the questions that are coming in, probably in the next few days, we're going to enhance that page with some of the questions that have come in today during this session. We're also going to include a copy of the webinar from today. Will be available for showing, so you'll be able to access this webinar recording on this page. In fact, any communications or updates, they're going to be reflected here on our ArcCorp site. Now, there's also some questions as to, if we need to reset our authenticators, or how do we contact our help desk? Well, for our travel professionals, our agencies, you would contact the CCC help at arccorp.com. And again, here's the phone number. For our airline partners, we have the airline help desk, which is also at ahd at arccorp.com. I'm going to take a few seconds here to look through any more questions. While I'm reviewing the questions, Ariana, is there any last thoughts that you want to share from as far as security and implementation?
I'd just like to emphasize how important MFA is in securing your account, not just with MyArc, but in general. MFA is going to become more and more ubiquitous over time. It really is the best way to safeguard your account, protect your identity, and ensure that bad guys don't get into anything that you're trying to log into. We encourage you to enroll in MFA if it's offered to you in other areas of your life with your bank or any other accounts you use elsewhere in addition to ARC. It really is security best practice, and it will protect you in the long run.
So thank you for that, Ariana. I really appreciate it. It's great insight. Some questions have come in again on the implementation of Google Authenticator, the step-by-step, as far as setting it up on a computer. Just re-emphasizing, Google Authenticator is an app on your device. So that would be whether it's an Android or iOS Apple device, whether that's a mobile phone or a tablet. That's what we would use for authentication for Google Authenticator. It's not an extension in Chrome. I know that has come up through a couple questions. It is a standalone app for a device. So that would be, again, through an iPhone, a iOS device, or a Android tablet or phone as well. All right, we'll give a couple more questions. There's some questions in regards to how do I get my MyArc login information. One of those I would definitely encourage you is to contact your MyArc primary admin within your agency. If you don't know who that is, there's an actual area on the MyArc landing page, which allows you to identify who that MyArc primary administrator is in your agency. Got some comments. We hate bad guys and we hate hackers. Yes, we do, and we really appreciate the work that we've done, our team has done, to really just create better privacy and security for our customers as well. Couple more questions. Let's see if we can capture two more. You said on phone or tablet. Will it work on a laptop? Again, Google Authenticator is, if it's a Chromebook, will not work. Again, it's a standalone separate device. If you use Okta as a vendor, Ariana, this will go to you. Why not make Okta app available for MFA?
We're going to look at that as a future enhancement. At the moment, for the March 13th implementation, we will only be offering Google Authenticator and email, but we will take that as feedback and look at that for the future.
Okay. Well, everyone, I know there is a lot of more questions that are coming in. We're going to do our best to go through these over the next few hours. We're going to go back and some that are specific, again, to DRS. There's actually a lot of questions that are coming in on that. We will take those offline and we'll be communicating with you. So what are those next steps? We talked about DRS. Well, February 6th, DRS moves to MyArc. So that's going to be next Thursday. That's our planned target date. If something does change, we'll communicate that. But as of right now, that is targeted for next Thursday, February the 6th. And then March 13th, that is when MFA from MyArc goes live. So let's talk a little bit about communications. Over the next month, there's going to be several communications that are going to be coming in, that are going to be going out, to our users from MyArc. So if you are today a MyArc user, expect to start seeing some communications come through. I know there's a lot of communications that depending on the week and what we're doing and new upgrades and enhancements, but I encourage you to stay tuned, as well as we have our weekly TAC communication, our travel agency communication that goes out on Mondays unless it's a holiday, and we're going to be updating that weekly with more information moving forward as far as MFA and what that looks like. Well, everyone, again, I know there's so much information, a lot more to come. On behalf of Ariana and myself, I want to say thank you for trusting ARC, for listening and putting your attention to what we're doing with MFA. And again, if you have questions, reach out to us. If not, we will see you in the next webinar. Thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye.